Today's learning target is I can read and write integers and find the absolute value of a number. An integer is any number in a set. So all of these numbers here that you're seeing, these are all called integers. So it's another name for number. A positive integer is any number or any integer that is greater than 0. So 1, 2, 3. These dots here, here and here, those just tell us that these numbers go on forever in both directions. A negative number, like you see here, are numbers that are less than 0. So these integers that are less than 0. So a time when you might see negative integers like these would be in temperature. So in Minnesota in January, it might be 3 below 0. So it's colder than 0. It's actually less than 0. Today we're going to talk about inequalities. So to start with, let's take a look at the word inequalities. So the prefix in means not. And equality, I see the base word in here, is equal. So an inequality is a number sentence that shows that two integers or two numbers are not equal. So when we write an inequality, we use the greater than or less than sign. So we might say 7 is greater than negative 4 or negative 3. Or we might say 13 is less than 100. If I have these two numbers, negative 3 and negative 1, and I put my less than sign, it's an inequality because negative 3 is less than negative 1 because it's farther away from 0. Today we're going to be talking about absolute value. An absolute value is how far a number is away from 0. So if we take a look at negative 5, okay, negative 5 on this number line is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units or 5 numbers away from 0. So to write that, we write it just like this. We write these up and down lines. That means the absolute value. So the absolute value of negative 5 is 5 because it takes 5 units from negative 5 to get to 0. Now if we go to the other side of the number line and we go to positive 5, okay, the absolute value of positive 5 would be the same number actually because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units or 5 numbers away from 0. So we'd write that the same way. The absolute value of 5 is 5. If I was asked to find the absolute value of negative 3, okay, I would just say that is equal to 3. And that's because I start at negative 3 and I go 1, 2, 3 numbers or 3 units to get back to 0. The absolute value of negative 127 would be 127 because it's that far, that many units away from 0. The absolute value of 13 would equal 13. So this will be how you show your work today. So here are a few problems where we're going to evaluate the expression. And so I can see here on this first one here, this one, I'm looking at the absolute value of negative 8 minus the absolute value of 5. So to find this one, I want to figure out what's the absolute value of each of these numbers. So the absolute value of negative 8 is going to be 8 because negative 8 is 8 units or 8 numbers away from 0. And the absolute value of 5 would be 5. And I can see then from there that 8 minus 5 is 3. So the absolute value of negative 3 in this one, that's just a matter of figuring out it's 3 numbers away from 0, so the absolute value would be 3. In this one, 6 plus the absolute value of x if x equals negative 2. So I'm going to put where I see an x, I'm going to replace it with a negative 2. So I'm looking at the absolute value of negative 2. I'm going to add 6 to that. So let's see, I know that the absolute value of negative 2 is 2. And I get 6 then plus 2, and that would equal 8. One last thing you'll be asked to do is to write two inequalities using the number pairs. So let's just say we have this number pair, negative 4 and negative 13. Okay, so remember, inequalities have a greater than, less than, or a greater than sign. Now I know that negative 4 is greater than negative 13 because it's closer to 0. So yeah, when you're dealing with negative numbers, remember the closer to 0 you are, the bigger the number. So one of my inequalities that I might write would be negative 4 is greater than negative 13. Okay, well I could write another inequality. I could start with negative 13 and I could say that's less than negative 4. Remember the greater than, less than sign. Some people think of the shark mouth here eats the bigger number. Some people say 2 points on this side, and 1 point on this side, so the 2 point side is greater.